In a stunning move that has left Moscow reeling, Sweden has delivered a crippling blow to Russian forces, shifting the tides of the conflict in Ukraine. This unprecedented aid package from Sweden, NATO's newest member, marks a historic departure from its traditional stance of neutrality. What secret strategies and cutting-edge technologies has Sweden unveiled to support Ukraine? How will this affect the balance of power in the region? Let's delve into the dramatic developments that have sent shockwaves through the Kremlin and bolstered Ukraine's fight for freedom. On May 29th, Sweden announced its 16th aid package to Ukraine. Tellingly, this was primarily a military rather than an economic or humanitarian aid package. It is designed to create Russian casualties, which would have been unthinkable for Sweden a few years ago. Such aid is a departure from Sweden's traditional foreign policy. Until Putin decided to invade Ukraine, Stockholm observed a policy of neutrality dating back to the Napoleonic Wars. The last time Sweden entered a conflict was in the Swedish-Norwegian War of 1814. The Swedish public widely supported their country's neutrality, and it was maintained during both world wars. As late as 2012, only 17% of Swedes expressed support for joining NATO. By 2021, the number increased to 46%. But Sweden was always wary of the threat from Russia. The two countries fought the long and bitter Great Northern War in the early 18th century over influence in the Baltic Sea. Sweden lost the conflict and has been on guard against Russia ever since. As early as 1904, Sweden was patrolling the Baltic with submarines to protect its coastline. That mission has given it more underwater experience in the Baltic than any other nation. The Gripen fighter was designed specifically to counter the threat from Russia. Even its radar system is designed to let it look toward Russian territory without flying in its direction. Fear of potential Russian aggression has entered Swedish cultural consciousness. Some of the older locals on Gotland Island, one of the most important locations in the Baltic and the likeliest place in Sweden that Russia would attack, reported in 2015 that they would hear stories from their parents warning that if they failed to finish their dinners, the Russians would get them. Back then, people on the island were divided over whether Swedish military should increase their presence there. No such divisions exist today. Putin's decision to invade Ukraine reawakened historical nightmares among the Swedish public and policymakers in Stockholm. Sweden announced its intention to join NATO a few months later and quickly became a partner to help Ukraine fend off the invasion. Like Germany, Sweden reversed its historical aversion to providing lethal military aid. It began with providing weapons like anti-materiel weapons, air defenses, and light vehicles. The investments increased, and Sweden demonstrated early on that it was willing to go far in its proportional investment in money and weaponry. On the first anniversary of the war, Sweden said it would donate 10 Leopard 2A5 tanks to Ukraine. Sweden's latest aid package is worth $1.23 billion. To put that into perspective, Sweden's total military spending in 2023 was $8.75 billion. Meanwhile, Sweden's total aid to Ukraine amounts to a little over $4 billion over the course of 16 packages since the invasion started. Such a proportionally large expenditure demonstrates Stockholm's threat perception. Russia's recent successes have required Stockholm to step up its spending even more. The pace of Sweden's separate aid packages also reflects Stockholm's wariness, as several have been passed in the last few months, and they have significantly increased in size. For example, in late February, Sweden announced a $682 million aid package, which was then its largest. The package included 10 CB-90 combat boats, 20 group boats, underwater weapons, $192 million worth of badly needed artillery shells, RBS-70 man-portable air defense systems, anti-tank missiles, Carl Gustaf grenade launchers, hand grenades, and medical supplies. Early in May, Sweden passed aid to help Ukraine secure its energy supply, since this section has been a particular target for Russian missiles and drones. This aid will be spent on equipment like generators, transformers, and solar cells. Will also include necessary spare parts like electrical switches, cables, pumps, and pipes. The May 29th aid package was about twice the size of the February aid package. It does not include donations of the JAS-39 Gripen fighter jet, although Ukraine has expressed interest in this platform in the past and does not rule it out in the future. Kyiv wants to focus on implementing its F-16 program. Stockholm says that it's still working on the possibility of contributing the Gripen system later, but for now it's too much of an ask for Ukraine to divide itself between the two new fighter jet programs. Though it won't be able to donate fighter aircraft, the rest of the aid is substantial. Sweden's Deputy Prime Minister, Ebba Busch, said that the package consists of equipment that is at the top of Ukraine's priority list. Maybe the most important contribution for the immediate term is in the form of additional 155mm artillery shells. Sweden didn't specify how many shells will be provided, but the new ammunition will help to swell Ukraine's supply to well over 2 million rounds. This will ensure enough ammunition to keep Ukraine in the fight into 2025. The Swedes will also be donating RB-99 AMRAAM missiles, the equivalent of the AIM-120. Sweden's Ministry of Defense says that these missiles will be repurposed specifically to serve in ground-based anti-aircraft systems. Presumably, they'll be supplied for Ukraine's NASAMS units. This is important because Russia took to using its aviation to more effectively support its ground forces after Avdiivka fell, and the proper air support enabled Russian forces to make more rapid advances to the west. Ukraine used its NASAMS and other air defense units to shoot down some of the Russian planes. More ammunition will check Russian aviation and force Moscow to be more cautious with its air power. Sweden will also be sending its entire fleet of PBV-302 infantry fighting vehicles to Ukraine. These have been retired from Swedish service as the newer Combat Vehicle 90 replaced the PBV-302 in 2014. Stockholm thought it better to donate its older vehicles rather than keep them in storage. Sweden's official announcement of the aid mentioned that the Ukrainian army was organizing several new brigades and needed armored vehicles for their infantry companies, a demand the PBV-302 will help to satisfy. The PBV-302 is armed with a 20mm cannon mounted on a turret to the vehicle's right side. The cannon can be fed with drum magazines, which can each hold 30 rounds. A 7.62mm machine gun can be used as a secondary weapon. It has armor that can withstand 20mm rounds and weighs 12.3 tons. It comes with a crew of 3, the driver, who also serves as a mechanic, the gunner, and the commander. The vehicle can carry up to 8 soldiers in its landing compartment. Over 600 of these vehicles were produced between 1966 and 2014, but that's not the amount Ukraine will receive. Much of the fleet was decommissioned from 2005 onward. By 2018, there were at least 180 still in service in various degrees of readiness. These vehicles are likely the ones Sweden will now hand over to Ukraine. The vehicles are all set to be repaired and modernized to at least some extent before the transfer. The remaining spare parts and maintenance equipment for these vehicles will be donated as part of the package, as will the 20mm shells for the onboard cannons. The PBV-302 will not be the only land vehicles Sweden donates as part of its latest package. The aid also includes surplus fuel transport vehicles in use by the Swedish Armed Forces. Previously donated Swedish material will continue to get upkeep through this aid package. Stockholm intends to help Kyiv with its command and control through donations of terminals with subscriptions for satellite communications. To help with training and military doctrine, the Swedish Defense Research Agency will assist the Ukrainian Armed Forces in creating their own Defense Research Institute. There are also a number of financial support provisions in the package. Most importantly, Sweden will make investments to ensure that Ukraine can get aid on a large scale on a rapid basis. Sweden will permit all of the weapons provided by this package to be used against targets on Russian soil if that's what Ukraine finds proper. Stockholm also claims that it will be able to replenish all of the ammunition and equipment it's sending to Ukraine through new investments. The most notable contribution in the package came in the form of 2 Saab ASCC-890 Airborne early warning and control planes. Swedish Defense Minister Paul Jonsson said that these aircraft would have the most significant impact on Ukraine's air defense network. These planes will better allow Ukraine to identify and track incoming missiles and drones. They can also spot targets of opportunity for offensive operations. Training Ukrainian Air Force personnel to fly these planes is also part of the Swedish aid package. Stockholm's decision to donate these aircraft was a significant step beyond the monetary cost. These were the only 2 AWACS aircraft in Sweden's fleet. The Swedes admitted that the donation of these planes and many other provisions in the package meant a temporary vulnerability in their territorial defense. However, they decided to take what Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson called a calculated risk. Perhaps the words of his Danish counterpart, Mette Frederiksen, came to mind. Early in 2024, she pointed out that it was better for European countries to sacrifice their own arsenals temporarily to ensure Russia's defeat far from their own homelands, rather than having to potentially use those weapons against an emboldened Putin far closer to home. Sweden plans to make up for the shortage of command and control planes by purchasing additional S-106 GlobalEye aircraft. This is Saab's newest AWACS aircraft and entered service in 2020. Sweden also insists that it has plans to replenish all of the ammunition and other equipment it will lose once they arrive in Ukraine. Sweden intends to do this by increasing its defense spending. In September 2023, Stockholm announced its intention to increase its military budget by 28% for 2024. Additional increases will come in 2025 and 26. These increases will put Sweden over the NATO target of spending 2% of GDP on defense by appropriations. The budget increases will also likely make Sweden an enduring and reliable partner for Ukraine. Stockholm has indeed already announced that its partnership with Ukraine will be for the long haul. On May 23rd, Prime Minister Kristersson said that Sweden will be providing Ukraine with $7 billion in aid over the course of 3 years to repel the invasion. The package released to Ukraine the following week was only the first of multiple packages to come, and those packages will likely get bigger as time goes on. Thanks to the increases in Sweden's military budget over the coming years, the country will be in position to deliver on this planned aid. The Ministry of Defense officially announced major planned investments in artillery systems and transport aircraft as part of the domestic defense spending program. These investments will put Sweden in a position to produce and deliver the weapons and ammunition Ukraine needs in the coming years. But how does Sweden's recent and coming aid impact Ukraine's ability to win the war of attrition? In December 2023, a report by the Estonian Ministry of Defense indicated that Ukraine could win the war in 2025 if it killed or maimed 100,000 Russian troops in 2024. While Russia has the ability to call many more soldiers than that to its colors, these people need to be trained properly and then assigned to a cohesive unit if they are to be effective on the battlefield. These units would quickly suffer casualties, creating even more demand for manpower that would in turn send troops to the front with even less training. It will be a vicious cycle that Russia, even with its much greater amount of available manpower than Ukraine, would not be capable of meeting. The Estonians estimated that if Ukraine met the 100,000 benchmark, it could reduce Russian training capacity to 80,000 properly trained troops per year. The rest would be ineffective cannon fodder. Sweden's donation, especially with the new artillery shells, will help Ukraine to achieve this objective. Since Ukraine killed or maimed an average of 172,000 Russian troops in each of the first 2 years of the war, this seems like it will be achievable, particularly with help from countries like Sweden. Sweden has emerged from over 200 years of military neutrality with surprising speed, and while there may be doubts about the feasibility of continuing to aid Ukraine in the United States, in Sweden there are none. Sweden doesn't have the luxury of an ocean to separate it from its old enemy. For Stockholm, it's better to defeat Russia on foreign soil than potentially need to defeat it on soil or in waters close to home. Even proportionally large investments and temporary depletion of domestic arsenals have not dissuaded Sweden's leaders from this opinion. Putin may hope that many of the countries that now oppose him will become exhausted with Ukraine over time and lose interest in continuing the effort. For deep historical reasons, Sweden is unlikely to be one of those countries, and that's important because it might be proportionally small, but it has a strong defense industry. It will also look bad if Sweden, the newest member of NATO and also one of its smaller participants, were to continue supporting Ukraine at significant cost to itself while the others did nothing. What impact will Sweden's aid have on the war dynamics? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain: Ukraine is not alone in its fight for freedom. What do you think of the support Sweden has lent to Ukraine throughout the war, and how will it affect Kyiv's ability to win the war of attrition? Don't forget to let us know in the comments. Also, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more military analysis from military experts.